Hi YouTube, Darth here. Today I'm going to do my 10K Q&A and I'm going to get to the top rated questions and some of the more frequent questions that I got, and the ones that I don't get to in this video I'll have another slightly less produced video after this one where I do get to all of them. And please forgive me, it's 1,000 degrees here today in the American Southwest, so if I die from heat from all these hot lights that are currently on me, please remember to like and subscribe after this video anyways. Today's first question is from Eric, and he asks a two-parter: what's your job in education, and if you could design your own battlefield, what theme and feature would it have? Well, Eric, my job and education sort of go hand in hand because when I was about 13, I realized that, hey, I really like video games. I'd kind of like to work on video games, and at the time, I was trying to figure out how do I go about doing that because it seemed like magic back in the 90s. And what I ended up doing is looking up in a library at the time. There was very little internet to be had, how one goes about getting in the video game industry. And at the time it said, hey, computer scientists tend to get into the video game industry because they need programmers. Well, I went to school for computer science and I ended up getting into the video game industry as a game designer, not as a programmer. So I have made probably 5 or 6 different games over the last 10 years, and you may know of some of these and you may not know of some of these. My first one that I worked on was a title called Rise of Legends, and this was an RTS title made by Big Huge Games back in about 2005-2006. Followed up by another RTS title, which was Age of Empires 3. We did the expansion pack for that one, the Asian Dynasties, and then I followed it up a couple of years later with an RPG called Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. This is probably one of my favorite AAA titles that I worked on. Spent a lot of long hours in the summertime working. Probably 120-hour week was my ultimate high there on that game in particular. So the video game industry is like anything else where it's a job first and then a lot of fun second, depending on the day that you may have. Now, I really enjoy what I do and it's almost a hobby for me. Now, if I could design my own battlefield, what theme and what feature would it take on? Probably something to do with the Cold War. I've always really liked that sort of span of time. Because I happen to be a military hardware nut, I really like reading a lot about the hardware, the strategy, etc. that happened during the Cold War, and sort of the technical advancements that each side would have, and how that played out in different bushfire conflicts around the entire globe. And as far as a sort of different take on Battlefield, what I would do is I would have some kind of rolling strategic thing that would happen where you have sort of one battle influences the next battle and so on and so forth. And maybe there's more of a larger strategic component to it. I'm a big fan of Tom Clancy's, what was that book? Red Storm Rising, where it's sort of a fictional account of what a war in Europe might look like if it didn't go nuclear. So I think that's actually fertile ground for any starting set of features for any Battlefield. But I tend to be more of a grounded or historical mindset when it comes to Battlefield, which is why I'm not really a fan of sort of the Battlefield 2142 and 2143 and other futuristic titles, because it's harder for me to grasp that in general. But I think a historical basis is a really good spot to start with for any Battlefield title, and I'm actually kind of excited that they decided to go as far back as Battlefield 1 as World War 1, because it's not something a lot of people have covered. And I think there's a lot of options there for the team to actually work on. My second question comes from Danny on PC, and he asks, who's your biggest hero and why is it First Clark? Okay, if you're not familiar with who First Clark is, point your web browser at Battlelog and look up First Clark. You'll be entertained, to say the least. He's probably the worst Battlefield player in existence. Now, I myself refuse to make fun of First Clark because I think there might be something else going on here other than just a terrible player. I kind of worry about just the general state of First Clark. Now, is he my hero? I don't think he is, but who is my hero? I really don't have heroes, to be honest. I find that heroes tend to just be humans like the rest of us, and we really sort of set our own expectations for life based on the kind of things that we want rather than the things that our heroes want. So having heroes really isn't my style. The next question comes from Captain Noob, and he asks, what kind of car do you drive? Lol. Well, Captain Noob, I'm a very practical person, and I am still driving the car that I bought 10 years ago, no, 12 years ago almost, a 2005 Honda Civic. I bought it because it made practical sense at the time. I needed three things out of a car. I needed it to drive, I needed it to have automatic, and I needed to have an HVAC system that actually worked in the wintertime, because my previous car, a 1982 Oldsmobile Omega, would fog up and I could not see out my window. So that was unacceptable. Now, I'm going to put up some pictures of my car when it was new. It is no longer in this shape. It has seen better days, and it kind of looks like a clunker now. Those, I'll let you leave to the imagination, but 10 years of abuse from people who don't know how to park next to me correctly have left it with many dents and scratches and make me very sad. My Clue asks, XB1 or PS4 if you wanted a console, what would you choose? So I'm probably going to end up getting a console sometime later this year. I put it off for a long time because I literally have no reason to play on a console, because I'm pretty happy playing Battlefield on PC, and just about any other game that I want to play is on PC right now. I tend to play a lot of strategy and first-person shooters, and strategy games in particular don't tend to work out very well on consoles, and shooters pretty much are on whatever system I feel like. But I'm getting away from the point. Which one would I buy? I'd probably get a PlayStation 4, simply because it doesn't feel like Xbox is currently winning anything right now. Bestus asks, who do you follow on YouTube and who is the best one for you? So on YouTube, I tend to follow a lot of Battlefield channels, no surprise there, but I also follow a bunch of general information channels. Now, for Battlefield, I typically follow anybody that will give me information about Battlefield in general, or has a Battlefield commentary. I usually don't follow clip channels or things that don't tend to have any talking topics whatsoever. So my favorite Battlefielders tend to be people like Matimio, X Factor, Marble Duck, and he's consistent, though I think his information is somewhat shoddy sometimes, Level Cap. Now, I follow these guys because they talk about a variety of different topics. For example, I follow X Factor not just because he's a buddy of mine, but also because he happens to have a lot of useful commentary while he's playing the game, and he tends to be really good at the game. I follow Matimio because he tends to talk about a lot of general information topics that are pretty good. I follow Marble Duck because he tends to talk a lot about a lot of technical details that not a lot of other channels tend to cover. And I follow Level Cap just to get sort of a pace of what the community is talking about. As far as information goes, it's hit or miss with Level Cap. It depends on how much research he's been able to do for his video that day, because he does produce a lot of videos. Sanko26, or perhaps the Sanko26, asks, favorite vehicle in the game, HT95 Levkov? My favorite vehicle in the game, it probably is the attack jet, and more specifically the Q5. Now, the reason I like the Q5 is because it just happens to have 2 rows of guns instead of 1, and I feel more like a fighter plane in general when I'm in it. It feels a little bit less like the flying sideways bus that the A-10 is, and the Su-25 just doesn't really strike me. But the Q5, that's definitely my favorite vehicle. Now, the HT95, on the other hand, could have had a good run at being a couple of people's favorite vehicles, but for some reason they decided to put terrible mouse acceleration on it, so when you try to start moving it, it moves very slow to begin with and then speeds up quickly. So what I end up doing is increasing my mouse acceleration by quite a bit when I'm in the Levkov. I actually have a mouse where I can select a couple of different DPIs as to what I want to play the game with. Ergo, I can play it a little bit higher when I'm in the Levkov just to try and be able to turn as fast as I would like to in that vehicle. But overall, the HT95 is a giant pile of junk. The Q5, however, is the thing that I like to spend my most amount of time in, and it's all around probably my favorite vehicle in the game. Asthmatic asked a very involved question. You are stranded on a desert island, and you are permitted to take one all-time favorite music album with you, one all-time favorite book, and a luxury item, which A, cannot be used to help you get off the island, B, must be inanimate, and C, doesn't permit communication with the outside world. What would your 3 things be? So you asked kind of a difficult question. Firstly, I don't listen to music all that often, at least not off of a specific album. Secondly, I definitely don't read that much. And thirdly, let's see here, what was the other one? A luxury item. Luxury item which has all these different rules attached to it. Well, first off, I refuse to get trapped on your desert island. But secondly, if I had to choose a music album from simply the ones that I actually own, I would probably go with Billy Joel's River of Dreams. As far as a book goes that I actually own, Do I even have anything on the shelf here? Nope, this is all games. You caught me up a creek here. I would probably just pick a cookbook and go with it. Hopefully something that's actually on the island. And then if I had to pick an inanimate luxury item, it has to be inanimate. That's the tricky part. So essentially, a simple machine probably is what you would want. Probably a wedge of some sort if I'm stuck on this Tom Hanksian island. And that would probably be the three things that I would bring. Although I would kind of wonder how I would get any use out of that music album without having a luxury item that has some way of playing it. I would probably just stare at it and be like, well, that was stupid. Maybe at least I have the lyric sheet and I can sing off a couple of tunes. Oh well. Demon G asks a much easier question, ice cream or beer. Now it honestly depends on what kind of mood I'm in. If it's 1,000 degrees out like it is today, I kinda want some ice cream, which I did have earlier. Now if I am having a delicious burger, which I did not have today sadly, instead I had I think a burrito, I would probably reach for an ale of some sort. My favorite beers tend to be ales or lagers. I find IPAs and pale ales and very hoppy beers to be almost undrinkable in mass quantities, and I kind of like to get a little bit of buzz when I drink beer. Now, for ice cream, I think I would probably prefer something that's very sweet and chocolatey, like Moose Tracks, for example. It happens to be my current favorite. Yeah, it really depends on what kind of day it is, and right now I would probably kill for some ice water in this 1,000-degree room. Last question from Ronnie Simpson. Have you ever competed in the BF Pro tournament? Have you ever played against other BF YouTubers like X Factor, Level Cap, Jack Frags, etc.? So to answer your first question, have I ever done a BF Pro tournament? No, I have not. And I in general try to stick away from guilds because I find that the structure just typically does not suit how my play style is. I like to play a lot sometimes and a little other times, and typically guilds or clans or whatever you want to call them tend to have very strict regimens of how they play games. They expect you to play and practice with the group so many times a night, so many times a week. I did that for 8 years in WoW, and I don't need to ever do that again. First-person shooters give me the freedom to play as much as I want, when I want, however I want. Now, for your second question, have I ever played against other Battlefield YouTubers? I've managed to be in lobbies with a couple of them, and I've joined on X Factor a couple of times because I happen to be buddies with them. And I think that it's a pretty enjoyable experience whenever I happen to get in there because they tend to be tailed by a lot of other pro-level players that happen to bring a whole new level to the game. And it kind of gives me the experience of, hey, look out, you actually have to think in this game instead of just sort of running up against a bunch of idiots. Or, hey, on the other hand, you have a bunch of talented people on your team. You can kind of enjoy yourself instead of making rage videos all the time. Well, that's all the questions I'm going to do in this video, but like I said, I'm going to get to all of them in a video that will be in the description below, so be sure to check out that if you want to have more questions answered, or if I didn't get to your question. And if I didn't get to your question, even in that one, be sure to ask your question below. I like to answer comments. That's one of the things I actually pride myself on. Again, thank you so much, everybody, for getting me to 10K. This has been radical so far, and I hope to continue making videos until I drop dead from this heat wave. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.